Welcome once again to another episode of B&B Hockey Talk. Hope you're enjoying your start of your week. Monday, December, new month, the 3rd. Matt, how are you? My name's Aaron Bloxall. This is my co-host, Matt Balzer. Matt, lots to talk about. It's been a busy NHL. Let's talk about, first and foremost, the biggest news of them all. The Leafs are going to win the Stanley Cup because they signed Nylander.
Yeah, so huge contract coming down to the final minutes there. Right before 2 o'clock, they locked up William Nylander on Saturday to a 6-year, $41.4 million deal with a cap hit of $6.9 million. But this year it will be $10.2 million because of the late signing this year. I think he has about $24.5 million in signing bonuses. But yeah, just a huge, as if the Leafs aren't good enough as they are already. It's really good news in Toronto now.
Ironically, signing bonuses are what's probably potentially going to cause the next NHL lockout. I know that's going to be a heavy subject, but Toronto, once they get Marner and Matthews signed, they're going to have 4 players over $40 million committed to. That's pretty unbelievable. They're going to have some good players, but do you think they're going to run into kind of the Chicago Blackhawks scenario, or are those players young enough, and do you think with the GM Dubois that they're going to be able to provide enough support for those guys? Because right now, to me, their defense still looks somewhat weak and susceptible. And, I mean, oh, my God, if Anderson goes down with an injury during the playoffs or any stretch, I think, Garrett Sparks, as good as he is, I don't think he can shoulder the load.
Yeah, so this is one of those things where you got to sort of win the cup when you got a few of your star players on your entry level deals before you really have to start paying up. But yeah, I can see them getting in trouble with the cap. Though Gary Bettman said today that the cap will be going up probably $3.5 million next season. The cap's at $79.5 million right now, and it looks like it'll go up to $83 million. So they'll get a little bit more relief there. But if you got Tavares at $11 million, Nylander at 6.9, Marner, the way he's been playing has been unbelievable, and he's going to be wanting around that $8-9 million at least. And Matthews should be getting paid around John Tavares money, the way that he's been playing. So if you take all that, and then luckily, and then you got Jake Gardiner as a UFA, and you got to see if you want to re-sign him as well. So as we brought up, or no, I didn't bring that up earlier. Timothy Liljegren and Rasmus Sandin, a couple of their first-round picks. Hopefully, they'll want to get them in the lineup sooner rather than later to save some cap there. But right now, I think the biggest thing is Morgan Riley's deal is really nice at $5 million as he's locked up long-term. And Freddie Anderson, I know he has the concussion problems here and there, but with his workload, hopefully he'll stay healthy. But yeah, next year is going to be really interesting to see how the Caps manage the cap. But I think with our old buddy here in Vancouver, Lawrence Gilman, as their assistant GM, I think he'll do a really good job at helping maneuver around that.
You mentioned a couple of players on the Marlies that are going to play for Sweden's World Junior team. We'll touch on Canada's World Junior team in a little bit. Absolutely stacked roster that they're going to have to trim down. It's going to be hard to make some of those cuts. But Toronto, by signing Nylander, obviously it freed up Josh Levio, and they made a trade today with the Vancouver Canucks. Why don't you fill us in on those details?
Yeah, so the Toronto Maple Leafs traded Josh Levio to the Vancouver Canucks for Michael Carcone, who's he's a young prospect, but he'll probably most likely just stay in the AHL. Has 17 points in 20 games in Utica this season. But this just frees up the roster spot because the Leafs were going to lose one of their players on waivers. And Dubas had told Levo before the season if he wasn't playing that he'd find him a new home to play. So that's how that worked out. And then with the Canucks, you get probably a guy that I think that's been pretty underrated with the Leafs, even though he hasn't played much. When he has been in the lineup, he's been able to produce some goals. But hopefully he'll get a shot with Bo Horvat. And I think with these younger wingers, I think if you're Vancouver, you just got to keep giving them each of these guys shots. Like we saw they lost Brendan Leipzig on waivers after having him towards the end of last season and the start of this season. He didn't work out, so you move on to the next guy. You keep doing that until you find the right fit. And with Carconi being gone, that frees up another roster spot in Utica for some of the younger prospects like Colin, Jonah Gadjovic, and Petrus Palmu to play more consistently.
Yeah, and I like that, the fact that somebody's going to get some more ice time in Utica. But moving on, Philadelphia Flyers, axing Ron Hextall last week. They move on and hire their new general manager and get the guy that they wanted. What do you think of Fletcher taking over for Philadelphia?
Yeah, I think this is a really good move. He's very experienced. I believe over in Minnesota, I believe he was their general manager for a while. But yeah, he's a good, solid general manager. We'll see what he does with that goaltending situation. As they've used 5 goalies this year, which is never good. And as they wait for Carter Hart, they got to find somebody who can consistently play every night. Brian Elliott, Michael Neuwirth have not gotten the job done whatsoever this season.
Speaking of goalies, Jonathan Quick come back for the LA Kings yesterday with the shutout over the Carolina Hurricanes. Matt Murray getting close for Pittsburgh to come back, and Carolina Hurricanes sending Scott Darling on waivers to send him down to the farm. Goaltending shuffle continues around the NHL as teams continue to look for that guy. Next on the list, there's another trade today between Pittsburgh and Anaheim, as Daniel Sprung got traded over to Anaheim for the defenseman Pettersson, not Elias, but the other Pettersson. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that trade?
Yeah. So Daniel Sprung would have been considered the Penguins' top prospect going into the season. He had 32 goals and 65 points in 65 games in the American League last season, but only has 4 assists in 16 games so far this year. Been in and out of the lineup. I think I would have thought that he would have tried to get a chance with Sidney Crosby on that top line, but he wasn't able to win over Sullivan's trust there. So he was basically been a healthy scratch for the past little while here. And Marcus Pettersson is a pretty good young depth defenseman. Has 6 assists in 27 games this season with Anaheim. But with Anaheim's abundance of young defensemen that they have, and with all their injuries up front, I think it just works out that each guy gets a new opportunity. And with the Penguins' need on the back end, with some of their injuries, or the guys like Jack Johnson who haven't exactly worked out so far this season, they needed some help there.
Yeah, I like the move for both teams, as it gives Anaheim some depth up front and helps with the depth of Pittsburgh, as they never can have enough defensemen, especially if they make it to the playoffs. Anaheim, of course, only 1 point behind Calgary in the Pacific. They're still hanging around. You have some other injury updates for us, including Michael Grabner of the Arizona Coyotes. And that's probably the minor name on the list, so I'll let you catch us up with all the injuries around the league.
Yeah, so the biggest names are Ilya Kovalchuk is out 4 weeks with an ankle infection. So going from the 4th line to injured reserve in just a matter of a week here. With the Nashville Predators, Philippe Forsberg is out 4 to 6 weeks with an upper body injury. So he joins Kyle Turris and PK Subban and Victor Arvidsson on injured reserve there in Nashville, as they are dealing with a lot of injuries to their top players. But with that, Eli Tolvanen, their top prospect, got called up and had a goal and assist in his first game up with the big team. In St. Louis, Alex Pietrangelo, Robbie Fabry, Carl Gunnarsson, and Alex Steen are all out with injuries. The big ones to Pietrangelo, who looks like he'll need hand surgery, and Fabry with a separated shoulder, as he can't catch a break from some major injuries so far in his career. Those are like the biggest names. Connor McDavid dealt with an illness tonight, but I expect him to be back in the lineup next game. And some guys skating, as you mentioned earlier, Matt Murray was back skating on the ice. Brian Elliott was out on the ice as well in Philadelphia. And Charlie McAvoy, who's been out with a concussion for a long time there in Boston, was in full practice today. So I'd expect him back in the lineup very soon.
You mentioned Nashville. They're currently tied for first with Colorado in the Central. Colorado's still sticking around. 3 stars of the week. Let's touch on those, and then we're going to touch on the 3 stars of the month.
All right. Yeah, so the 3 stars of the week. Third star, Jonathan Huberdeau of the Florida Panthers, had 2 goals, 9 points in 4 games. And second star, I don't think anybody saw this guy coming. Aiden Hill, the goalie of the Arizona Coyotes, with Ronta and Kemper both injured right now, had 3 wins, 1 shutout, and a .983 save percentage. And the first star of the week was Mark Scheifele with 5 goals, 8 points in 4 games. As he had a couple game winners, that OT winner against New Jersey and the shootout winner against the New York Rangers last night. As that top line with him and Blake Wheeler just continue to rip it up. And Nikolai Ehlers also starting to heat up as well.
Top rookie of the month for November, Rasmus Dahlin out of Buffalo. He's heating up. It's clear the top 3 for the Calder right now are Elias Pettersson in Vancouver, Brady Tkachuk in Ottawa, and Rasmus Dahlin in Buffalo. Should be interesting to see if any one of those guys steps up and gets Rookie of the Month for December. But 3 stars of the month, why don't you fill us in on those?
Yeah, so the third star was Marc-Andre Fleury, who went 9-4-0 with a .920 save percentage and 4 shutouts. Very, very impressive. The second star, Nathan McKinnon, had 9 goals, 23 points in only 14 games. And the first star, this guy, Patrick Laine, had 18 goals and in only 12 games in the month of November. As he became the 4th youngest player in NHL history to reach, or the 4th fastest player in NHL history to get to 100 goals in only 179 games. The only guys that were younger were Wayne Gretzky, of course, 20 years and 40 days. Jimmy Carson, 20 years, 116 days. And Brian Bellows, 20 years, 179 days. Laine did it in 20 years and 224 days. That's a lot of numbers coming at you. But very, very impressive, as it looks like he's starting to creep away with that Maurice Rocket Richard there with the top goals.
Team Canada announces their starting roster, I guess their camp roster for the World Junior Championships coming up later this month. Any surprises there, or any players that stand out to you? I know the regulars, they're just absolutely looking stacked with Evan Bouchard, Michael DiPietro, you name it, Nick Suzuki, Cody Glass. What surprises you? What stands out to you? And what are your comments on that?
Yeah. So the big 2 defensemen on that back end, Evan Bouchard and Noah Dobson, are just going to be just towers back there on that right-hand side. But yeah, up top, we got some guys with some NHL experience in Comtois and Formanton. Nick Suzuki's absolutely ripping it up in the O this year. Owen Tippett. I'll be interested to see Florida's first-round pick from a couple years ago. Gabe Velarde, who's been dealing with back injuries basically this entire season. I think he just gotten back into the American Hockey League for some conditioning games. I'd like to see where he's at. But the one guy I'm very interested in seeing is Alexis Lafreniere, who's supposed to be the first-round pick in 2020. I saw this guy at the under-18 tournament, I believe, and this guy was just unbelievable. Just how good he was. I think as a 16-year-old, he had the best season since Sidney Crosby in the Q. So as a 17-year-old, I think this guy has a high chance of making this team. Probably sort of in that Connor McDavid role in that first year that he played, where he's sort of on that 3rd, 4th line. But he'll be able to produce a lot of offense there.
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy when you see the team that they could put out. Michael Rasmussen and Robert Thomas from Detroit and St. Louis. Eligible, but so far not looking like they're going to be on the team, as those NHL teams won't lend them out. Final thoughts before we wrap up today's episode.
Yeah, so I think there's only 3 games on tonight's schedule. Nikita Kucherov extended his point streak to 10 games. I think that's 2 or 3 seasons in a row that he's had a point streak of 10-plus games. I think the Colorado Avalanche are 9-0-2 in their last 11 games. As they're starting to give a Nashville with their injury troubles a run for their money for the top of the Central. And the Edmonton Oilers, even though it looks like they'll probably lose tonight if they haven't already, we're 4-1-1 under Hitchcock since he started. And Mikko Koskinen has been really good in net so far this year. I think over a 920 save percentage right now as he's starting to take the reins away from Cam Talbot. For all the highlights and news, you can follow us on our Facebook page at B&B Hockey Talk, as we don't really have the time to edit in highlights and all that. So if you follow us there, I think basically every few days we're gaining more people. And if you are new to us, welcome. And hopefully you don't get pissed off at so much of the highlights getting spammed at you all at once. But yeah, it's good. Yeah, that's all I got.
You can subscribe to us at B&B Hockey Talk, or like Matt said, follow us on Facebook where we do a lot of the replays and a lot of the highlights. I think we're due for another fight on there, Matt. What do you think? Jimmy Howard and Tuukka Rask didn't quite make it go for us the other night, but that was a great highlight. If you want to catch up on that, that's on our Facebook page. Again, B&B Hockey Talk. Thanks again. This is our Monday episode. I'm Aaron Bloxel with Matt Balzer. Thanks for joining us. Leave your comments below, and we look forward to seeing you on Wednesday.